Okay, great. So yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for being here for this session. So we're going to really get into the exciting stuff now. We're going to get into a demonstration which Manny's going to kindly provide for us. So what we're going to talk about now is the actual sales agents, which include sales chat, sales agents itself, and then also the sales research agent. So I'm Alice Walton, so I'm a technical specialist at Microsoft, and I'll let Manny introduce himself.
Hi everyone, so yeah, I'm Emmanuel, Boateng, also a technical specialist here at Microsoft, and later down the line I'll come on to show you a bit about our sales agents as well and do a demo to bring it to life a little bit more. But yeah, over to you, Alice.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm sure everyone's been keen to see a bit more detail about these sales agents. I know that Hayley showed us a really good sizzle video to get everyone a bit excited, and now we're going to get into a bit more of the deep dive in terms of how you can actually start to look at using this within your sales organisation. So just to get started with a few challenges, it's always good to start by looking at what the challenges that sellers are actually facing today. So we know within sales organisations through conducting research, for example, at the moment, we're seeing that sellers are experiencing a lot of pressure. So maybe their targets are going up every quarter, for example, every year. And this is putting them under a lot of pressure. But at the same time as that, we've actually got a situation where they're spending a lot of their time doing admin tasks. In fact, 70% of that time is doing things like manual data entry. So for example, if people are using CRM systems, if they're a seller, they're going in, typing away, putting in that manual data. So that's using up a lot of admin time. But really what we want is a solution that can actually free up the seller's time to be able to do things like work with the customers, things that they do best really. So having those conversations with the customers and actually then working on those high value deals. So, like I said, what we need is a solution to allow them to be able to do that. Thankfully, here at Microsoft, thanks to Hayley's team in the Copilot product team, we've actually got a lot of ways that we can solve that problem. So with agents and also our assistive sales chat that Hayley talked a little bit about this morning, we're actually able to move away from that manual data entry and cleansing. So people actually go into the CRM system, manually doing updates, like things like that. We can actually then move on to this AI transformation for your business, specifically for your sales teams and your sellers. So this is where we can actually then bring in agents and our sales chat assistant to enable them to move to more focus on those things they need to be able to focus on, so their priority workload. So this is where we can actually surface it within the place they work. So Hayley mentioned this morning, but we'll show it when Manny comes to do his demo. So this could either be inside Outlook or Teams or wherever the seller is actually working. And same for the sales leader as well. We'll show you later on in the session towards the end, we've got a sales leader tool that can really help them look at their salespeople, what they're up to, where are we in terms of the quarter and the pipeline and the forecasting. So it's really for every role at the sales organisation level, we've really got something that can help them really drive business and increase revenue ultimately. So that's also done by not missing deals. So we talked about we'll talk about the sales research agent. So this is things where we can then do research within the agents, and we can actually then do that research behind the scenes so that the seller's not having to do it manually. So this is where we can then save time and allow them to have those customer relationships and really go into the meeting, for example, with the customer and have all of that information they need to hand without having to go and do it manually in the background. So what we're moving towards is the future of sales. So here at Microsoft, we're developing a lot within the agent side of things. So in the past, we would have had just a sales representative, maybe using that CRM application, whether it's Dynamics or Salesforce or another sort of CRM application. So that was the past, they were doing that manual data entry. Then we moved towards, a couple of years ago, where we introduced Copilot. So that's where we then had the seller plus then a personal productivity tool. So this enabled them to do things like have that meeting, but then also have those notes automatic captured. We could do a task that went into CRM, for example. So that's great. We've still got that today in the new era of AI. But now what we've got is those Copilot plus then an agent team. So we can use this to scale the sales team out. So we've got our sales rep plus Copilot, and then these sales agents which can be in the background, do things like research and even qualify leads for us ourselves. But obviously we want to kind of work in that augmented way in terms of what we want the seller to do and how we're then using that team of digital agents to actually be able to go and do that. So digital sales team. So I talked about the roles within the sales organisation. So what we'll do with the demonstration when Manny comes onto it is we'll look at a seller from two parts. So we'll have a relationship manager side of things within that sales area at the top. And then we'll also look at a velocity seller. So this is where we can really empower those sellers, whichever kind of category they fit into, and really empower them to be able to use those agents and leverage that assistive side of things with sales chat, for example, to really be able to then maximise that productivity. So one step further from what we had from Copilot, as show of hands, is anyone using the Copilot within sort of like a sales scenario? Okay, great, good to see some hands. Yeah. So this is where we'll then kind of maximise that with agents to really take it forward to that next era of sales. And I mentioned before about the sales leader. So this is where Manny will show it at the end. So that's where we can really then help that sales leader see what the sales team's up to and how we can then maximise the productivity of the team. And then for the sales operations, this is where we can help them achieve that sales excellence, for example, with pipeline reports. And that can all be automated instead of them having to go away and do export to Excel. I know a lot of people like to do that from a CRM system, but really what we're trying to do is be able to automate that pipeline reporting and really save time for all of these different roles. It's really been able to get that maximum value out so that really they can focus on what they actually need to do, which is try and maximise revenue and close the deals. So before we get onto the exciting demo part, I just wanted to set the scene in terms of what these different products are and where they kind of sit. So we've talked about the relationship managers. So this is where they can use an assistive side of things. So this really sits under our sales chat area. So this is our experience that we've got within inside Microsoft 365 Copilot chat. And this is where we can ask things, for example, in natural language. So say, for example, I might be an insurance broker and I want to go in and ask it about a specific customer. Has this customer been interacted with before? Because we see inside the insurance area with brokers specifically, that maybe another broker's already been in there, but we might not know that if we didn't be able to ask this in a kind of easy to ask access. So that's just an example where we could then go in and see that, yes, that customer's already met with another broker within our insurance firm recently, and we can then go in and see that. So what we'll show in the demonstration is bringing that relationship manager side of things to life within sales chat. We've also then still got Copilot for Sales, so that's where I mentioned before about our personal productivity side of things. So that could be where we're using Outlook, for example, it's helping us draft personalised emails, or it might be where we've used Teams to have a meeting. And this can then give us that great meeting summary. So instead of having to type notes away, I know I personally use it on every customer call I've got now. It's great for kind of being able to actively listen. So instead of having to type away notes, as a seller, it actually enables me to then have that meeting summary captured automatically with AI. And then that can then be pushed automatically into the CRM system. So that's still what we've got going on with Copilot for Sales. But then we're taking it one step further by making it more autonomous in the background. So this is where we move into more of our sales agents, where we've got assistive and then autonomous. So this is things like where we could do lead qualification. And what we talk about is sort of threshold. So this is all editable in the background. So you might want to have a certain deal size threshold, for example, that's reached. I'm just going to pick a number. So say, for example, the deal goes over £1 million. We really want a relationship manager to get involved in that, because that, for our organisation as a sales organisation, that's a very high value deal. So we wouldn't necessarily want the autonomous agent to go away and deal with that. So that's something when it reaches that threshold, we can get a person involved. So the relationship manager can then come in, use their assistive tools, use sales chat, for example, Copilot for Sales, and they can then come into play. So that's what Manny will walk us through from a relationship manager side, but then it will also show it from a velocity sales side in terms of those more autonomous tools that we can use. So what we really see it as a collaborative approach where it depends which scale of kind of automation you're at, whether it's the assistive side for a relationship manager or velocity sales with more kind of lots of leads coming in. Say, for example, got like a bulk order. That's where we can then use a velocity sales approach where the agent will actually maybe qualify them, do a bit of research, for example. So it depends what the kind of scenario is, really. And that's something we can talk to you about and get a bit more kind of deep into after these sessions. So just finally, to set the scene, just before Manny starts to do the demonstration, just a bit more about where these actually sit. So within Microsoft 365 Copilot chat, that's where our sales chat will sit. So this is our assistive chat that relationship managers can use, for example, or any seller. And this is where it can surface up data from a CRM system, whether that's Dynamics 365 or Salesforce, whichever one you're using. That can then use that natural language as a seller. We can go in and ask it a prompt, and it will then bring us that information. So say, for example, we can then see that there was already a meeting that happened last week. That's where we can then surface that up. And what we're really trying to get to is that enables the seller to really, they might, like Hayley said, they might be out on the phone. They can actually just ask the Copilot chat that without having to open up their laptop, go into the CRM system, go into the customer record, see the meeting notes, for example. It's just surfacing that up into the place that they work, which would then be, just help them really maximize that productivity and then focus on actually getting to that customer meeting. Can we maximize the revenue and close out the deal with that customer? So that's sales chat. And then sales agents, so this is the one where we can have it working 24/7 in the background autonomously. And this is where we can have it do things like research or that lead qualification agent that we talked about, where it can actually prioritize the leads, do the research, and then even qualify those kind of lower value deals. And that one is also in Microsoft 365. And that also brings through data from a CRM system, whether that's Dynamics or Salesforce. And then finally, Manny will show us that sales research agent. So this is through the lens of a sales leader. So this is where we're going to look at it just inside Dynamics 365. This one is exclusively just inside Dynamics 365 sales. So this is where we can then bring that data through together, and it can do things like actionable insights and provide that information about what's happening with the sales team. So as we can see with all of these ones is that they are coming out into preview very soon. And just to note with all of these, they are all extensible with Copilot Studio. So if you want to make any changes to any of these, that can be done in Copilot Studio. And we also then have connectors into our first-party Copilot apps, for example. So for example, the research app that enables us to do that deep research and come up with a plan for the customer. That's where we can then connect into, I think Hayley showed a slide that had the first-party connectors and the custom connectors. So just to make you aware that we've got the ability to connect sales chat, for example, back into sales agents, so they're all connected together. So that just gave you a bit of an overview of what sales chat is, what sales agents are, what sales research agent is, before I now hand over to Manny to go through and show you the exciting part, which is a bit of a deep dive demo into these things to kind of get you to think about how you could use these within your sales organization.